Read Junk.
ReadJunk. ReadJunk
Podcast.
ReadJunk Podcast with your host, my guy.
Hey everybody, it's the ReadJunk Podcast. I'm back with a new episode. The last one was with my friend Chris Taylor. He filled in for guest hosts for a little bit. Gonna try to get back into more episodes, but for now I got at least one episode coming up, and then one planned for next week. We'll see how that goes. This episode is with my buddy Ray, who works at ReadJunk.com from time to time. He also worked at Moon Records, and then we also talk about the ska scene, some Mustard Plug stories. And then we geek out a little bit and talk about some Star Wars, Walking Dead, and some other TV show stuff. We talked before the Mustard Plug show that we went to on Saturday in the car. We drove around 20 minutes or so trying to find a parking spot, and he lucked out and found one right in front of the venue. It was a good time talking with Ray, so that episode's coming up right now. I'm also scheduled to interview Aaron from Real Big Fish on Friday, so we'll see if that happens or not. Hopefully that will be the next episode. I might try to start doing some podcast episodes over Skype and interview some people that way. So we'll see what happens and who's available, and then also how it sounds as well. So let's get into it. This is Ray and me talking in the car about moon ska, and more ska. And we're live across from Bowery Electric. I'm sitting here with Ray, my buddy, friend of me.
No, I would say that we're...
You need to talk into a microphone.
Yeah, I would say that we're very good friends, though.
Yeah.
We're friends for something like 20 years now, I would say.
Yeah. Now, you first... I don't know where I first... Well, I guess through Read, right? We met through Read magazine?
Well, part of that, for sure. To be honest with you, I was actually thinking the other day when we actually, met... And I can't think of a specific moment when we actually physically met.
It was probably one of Adam's birthday karaoke parties.
Maybe, yeah.
Unless it was at a show.
I certainly was aware of who you were because of things like ska punk and other junk. And
I am very famous.
And of course, you're friends with our mutual buddy Adam.
Yeah. But you worked at Moon Records for how many years? And when did you start doing that?
I started right out of high school, actually. I started working at Moon Ska.
As an intern, or? Yeah,
as an intern, and that was probably either that September or that October of '98. So that was right out of high school for me. And I was very enthusiastic about ska, and the moment I saw an opening on the website that they were looking for interns, I went right for it. And Noah kind of recognized me from various shows and stuff like that, and so somehow I talked him into hiring me as an intern. Despite me not having a major that pertained towards the music industry. I basically just went in and said, I'm a fan, I love the music, and I want to do work for you, and and I'm fine with getting free stuff.
And Buck is like, "Here, go give me a beer."
No, Buck actually was very laid back, and I don't have anything bad to say about him at all. He was a very cool guy, and he was definitely open to ideas, and so forth. So
was Adam there when you started?
Yeah, Adam was there when I started, and Adam and I gradually became friends during that time. We kind of knew each other through things like, shows and stuff. And, I was bullshitting with him, every time I would see him, man something like a Moon merch table and stuff like that.
And he's still doing that to this day.
Yeah, so it was a blast, that period of time of me working at Moon. I actually worked at Moon until the very end, and I was the last person to close the Moon Ska store. That was
the second location, though, right? Because where was the first location located?
The first location was in Alphabet City.
Okay.
And I was I did go to that store a couple of times before they moved, and I believe like around the fall or the winter of '97 was when they moved to East 10th Street.
Which was, it was the bigger store, yeah.
Yes, I mean...
Because the other one, you could barely even walk. It was like, 3 people are in it.
Have you been there? Do you remember going there?
I remember going to the first one. That's for the first time, I think. I was like talking with Adam and my dad and my brother, and we all went down, and it was like we could barely fit into the store. And then Adam was just, and I think Abby maybe, or somebody back there was working.
Yeah, I mean, you would walk in and the counter was right there. So as soon as you would walk in, there was the counter, and that was how small it really was.
But that's how it was, kids. It was, you got to go to a store to buy music at the time, and I would have to have my dad drive us all the way down just to make a trip to Moonsky.
And it was a very fun place to go to too, especially if you loved the music. And but Moonsky wasn't, especially that first store, it wasn't the type of store where you can come in and like there are shelves and then you can just dig through the shelves. It was like literally it was a counter, and then there was pictures of the covers like on the wall, and you would just pick.
I'll take number 3.
Oh, let me get that one, Or like, sometimes if they were cool enough, like, whoever was manning the store, you can say, hey, can you put this on? And, that person would put it on. I don't think Adam was one of those people. I think he was just like, no, we're listening to what we have on right now,
The second store was a lot better, and I remember that one more because I would go down and make a trip to go work with Adam when he wanted help on the website. So I would help him do some of the web mastering stuff for the Moon Records site. Because the guy from like Mind Toilet was working on it, and then I kind of fixed some of his stuff, or I don't know.
Yeah, sure, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah. So I would kind of, I guess Adam was sick of dealing with him or something. So he asked me. So I'm like, all right, I'll come down and help. And then he would just throw me like merch, and I would hang out in the back room as I was working on the website for a little bit. But I would just spend a couple hours doing that. But yeah, I mean, the first time I met Adam, I think it was outside the wetlands, and he oversold me one of his zines.
Oversold you?
Yeah, oversold because it was probably worth, I don't know, a couple dollars. But he's like, I'm like, all right, I'll pay like whatever it was. And then after that, I wrote to Adam, and then we kind of became friends that way. So that's how like we know each other, I guess, through Adam. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
I wish Steve or somebody would do a Moon Records documentary though. I know like they have the ska music stuff, but music one coming out.
Certainly, yes. And I know that Steve was definitely considering writing a book documenting, ska music or modern ska music, which is basically the third wave.
So Steve's writing that, and then Mark's doing one about the 80s.
Yeah.
Mark from Root Boy George, yeah.
Yep.
I have to interview him at some point.
Marco on the bass. And so Steve definitely he's definitely one of the old time friends from the Moonsky days that I have still been able to retain. So we're in contact as well.
You were supposed to go see a show or a movie the other day, right, with him?
Yeah, actually, he invited me to go see the U.S. premiere of the Trojan documentary, Trojan Records documentary.
I was like Rude Boy, yeah.
Yeah, which, unfortunately I couldn't make it, but I would have loved to have seen it. And
I want to see it.
I'm really excited to see it as well. And coincidentally, with that movie, it parallels with the project that I'm working on right now, actually, because I have a curator friend of mine who is working on an exhibit in which it would cover the experience of the Asian immigrant and their part in local music. And so, he reached out to me recently and asked if I would help him edit certain sections that he's writing for, and basically help him co-write these sections that involve, of course, historical information about notable Asian immigrants who had a part in various type of music scenes, like, for instance, like the Chin family of VP Records, or Leslie Kong, who is, a very well-known Asian Jamaican producer. of the 60s
Oh,
and
really?
70s.
Person that does VP Records is Asian?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Okay.
he was born of Chinese immigrants, and somehow they made their way to Jamaica. I mean, from there, VP Records was formed. So,
I did not know that.
yes, indeed, and Leslie Kong obviously is like a huge part of 60s Jamaican music, and he's intimately connected to people like Jimmy Cliff, for instance, and and he's worked with all the greats.
So this is going to
of
be
that
a
time.
documentary?
Well, no, this is going to be an exhibit.
Oh, an exhibit.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so my friend just needed help in terms of
Will be like an art gallery
co-writing it.
somewhere.
an exhibit
Brooklyn.
that focuses on as I said, like the part that Chinese immigrants had with music, and of course they had a huge part with reggae music. Oddly enough, so because you have things like VP Records and stuff like that.
That's like the record label for reggae. It's either that or Easy Star Records.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So that's going to be fun, and certainly the Trojan documentary. A big part of that documentary is documenting the experience of the Jamaican immigrant to the UK, which of course brought Jamaican music to the UK and popularized it through things like club reggae and stuff like that. So that movie for sure was up my alley, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. But that would have been like really fun to watch, and I'm definitely going to see it eventually.
Yeah, I'll wait for video. It's kind of hard finding a screening around here, especially when I live up in New Jersey now. So it's
And the screenings are like far and few in between as well. I mean, they're going to be only, if it's showing in any other theater, you can only imagine it would be around for like a week or something like that, or a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, people seem to like that from what I saw on Facebook, so I'll have to definitely check that out.
I'm still a huge fan of Jamaican music, and I always will be. And I always say that Jamaican music is one of my first loves of music. Obviously I love things like punk rock and hip hop and all that good stuff, but Jamaican music definitely is a big part of my identity, and also my teen years, most definitely, going into my college years and into my 20s and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's the one genre that has stuck with us over the years. It's like we listen to other stuff, but we still gravitate to this certainly for shows, because it's like it's like going to see like having a party with a bunch of your friends.
Mm-hmm.
So like tonight, seeing Mustard Plug, we're gonna see people from Root Boy George, and then Sergeant Skag and Mustard Plug I'm friends with. So it's like, I wanted to do a podcast with Mustard Plug, but I'm going to have to wait to either do that over the phone or...
Sure, I'm acquainted with Mustard Plug as well, and I've met them a few times over the years and all that stuff. And
what was that story you were telling me about with the masseuse?
Oh, yeah. Well, Mustard Plug at one point, though, because at one point, going back to what we were talking about of my time at Moon, I started off as an intern, but eventually I was put on the payroll. And I was opening the store every day, and I was honestly, even though it was like my first 2 years of college, I was much more interested in music and the scene and being involved in Moon Records than I was with school and stuff like that. So, it became a full-time job, and I was there like every day, and I was the guy that opened and closed, Moonsca Records, the storefront, for that last 2 years, and it was fun. But at many instances, though, it kind of coincided with a time where the interest of ska began to decline, and so the traffic of people like gradually declined immensely, which led to, of course, the
downfall. The downfall of Moon.
Moon ska, so there was certainly good times and bad times involved there, but I think very fondly back on my time working at Moon. So, as I was saying, and I was the type of person who always volunteered for things like being a part of the record label. So, when people like, for instance, Noah Wildman, who used to be the manager, or he was the original manager of the Moonska record storefront, when he left, so a lot of us who were still around were filling in those gaps and sharing the responsibility. So I was doing things like booking, various shows through Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whatever was left of the Moonska showcases and stuff like that.
God, I remember. I love seeing those flyers. I love seeing them in the
man.
aquarium, like seeing all the ska shows at the wetlands. Those good times.
Yeah, very good times. And that was what was part of what was so great about Moonska Records was because Moonska Records was, in a position where it can do things like that and expand the scene. And the people that were working at Moon at the time for the promotions department all did an excellent job in getting the word out there. And they were poised in a position where ska was popular and it was in the mainstream, and people went after it because they would see it on things like MTV.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of music and a lot of bands. It's almost unheard of now, like how many bands wanted to play ska and wanted to get their music out there, and we used to get inundated with so many demos
I can imagine,
of ska bands from all over the
kids,
world.
All these kids out of high school that were in the high school band.
Yeah, a lot of it, I would say a lot of it, was hard to listen to. Some of it was good. There were some good stuff out there for sure.
In a way, I was like definitely getting annoyed of all of the abundance or just oversaturation of all the bands. I was kind of good to see it die in a way because I wanted all the good bands survived in a way. Mm-hmm. And then all the shit ones kind of just went on to emo bands or did other stuff.
Yes,
so it's like
they all moved on to whatever other music.
Yeah, because there was just so many ska bands, and it was like, especially shows in New Jersey, it was like every band sounded the same, and it was like,
I loved, thinking back now, I loved actually like going through the demos because, I was so enthusiastic about that music and finding, like, that one band that was awesome that nobody ever heard of. What I mean?
That's me like trying to find a review to do for music right now. I'm like, oh, this band doesn't suck. I'll review it.
Surprisingly, there were a lot of like really good ska bands from elsewhere, from outside of the country.
Yeah.
Because ska, of course, is really a beloved genre, and there are so many countries out there that, of course, have a sizable ska scene, and a lot of them were like in Europe, or think places like in Eastern Europe.
Like down in South America and Mexico, ska is freaking huge.
Ska is huge, and God bless the people that...
And Japan and stuff too, yeah.
Exactly. God bless the people that love that music and make the scenes possible in places like within South America or Japan, of course. Yeah, I mean...
And even all like the Latin Spanish kids in New York City, they're the ones that are like 75% of them are the ones in attendance for these ska shows.
Going to the shows, yeah. Yeah, which there was a period of time where, I took a break from going to shows and I got out of the scene for a little while. And then I came back in a big way, and I started going back to shows, and that was probably about 10 years ago or so when I started going back to shows. And when I did, the scene obviously was a lot different from 10 years earlier when I was really involved, because one, there was a lot less venues around in the New York City area.
It's even worse now.
Yeah, and and a lot of the venues have become places like somebody's loft, like literally like the the stage area or the playing area would be like in somebody's kitchen.
What was
and
that
like
one
the
place?
bar was a
What was that one place in
kitchen table.
Brooklyn that closed down? But it was like someone's house and there was like no signs on it. It was like someone's apartment.
Yeah, that's like the Swamp
the Swamp,
also known as the Loft, and like probably
Okay.
a bunch of other names. It always changed its name somehow because
I never went there,
technically it
though.
wasn't supposed to be an area where you would
Yeah.
go to see a show.
It was just nothing but like empty factories and stuff.
Yeah, the first time I ever went to that place, I had trouble finding it because like the GPS was telling me I was in the right area, but there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing to
It's
indicate
people's homes. No.
that there was a show. Not even people's homes. It was more like it was factories, as you just said, and just unmarked doors. And I remember like coming up to this one door, and it had a piece of string. It wasn't even a doorknob. It was just a piece of string, attached to this door. And I'm like, is this it? And then I pulled the string, and the door like opened, and then I can hear music finally coming from like the top of the
secret
staircase.
knock. Yeah.
But yeah, that place was actually really cool. Very, very, it was great. Like, I mean, it was New York to the bone, and shows there were often promoted by Agent J.
Yeah.
Of
probably why I know
Slackers
it,
and
yeah.
Stubborn All Stars fame. And the shows were awesome, and like especially for somebody like me who was really into Jamaican music and ska music and stuff like that.
Like
that was the place to go.
Yeah, the rocksteady stuff. Yeah.
So as I was saying though, like just to lead back to what you were asking earlier
about Mustard Plug. Yes.
Mustard Plug. I actually did book a Moon Ska showcase for through the Wetlands way back. And which was an awesome show, as I recalled. And it was one of those shows where, like I would book a band, and for whatever reason they couldn't play. They would say okay to it, and for whatever reason they couldn't play at the last minute. So I would have to scramble and find a replacement band to fill in certain spots, and that was just how it rolled. Sometimes, and like I remember like. So I don't even remember which band it was, but there was an opening spot that came about, and as a result of a band like not being able to make it, and this was literally like 2 days before the show was supposed to happen, and so I was able to touch base with friends like Big D and the Kids Table at the time, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do it," and it was easy for them because they would just drive from Boston to New York, and so they were part of that show. And I think I got involved in that same show, Rathskeller, which was actually a band that I discovered through demos, and I was like, these guys are really good, and their information was on there, so I always kept them in mind and saying, and figured like since they were based out of Philadelphia.
Rathskeller, I think I've seen them once.
Yeah,
probably one of the Wetlands shows.
Rathskeller, I believe. One of the band members used to be in Inspector 7.
Okay.
He was a gentleman by the name of Tedford.
Okay.
And so that became his band after he left Inspector 7. And I think he had another band called the Studebakers, which were really good too. They were involved with a compilation called Scarmageddon 3, which I'm very fond of. Again, like
isn't that the one Adam did?
No,
that was the fourth one.
That was the fourth one.
Okay.
Yeah. Scarmageddon 3 was actually compiled by.
That was a good one. The second one I think is the best one. The Spawn of Scarmageddon.
Yeah, I like them all. I'm very fond of I mean, the fourth one, of course, like I like just because like Adam was involved in it, and I'm a good friend of his, and I'm somewhat familiar.
Yeah, but he likes Rush, so what the hell does he know?
Yeah, so some of the choices there were kind of questionable.
I told him like, oh, get Conehead Buddha. He's like, oh, hippie ska, that's interesting. All right, I'll put him on. I mean, I'm like, I liked Conehead Buddha stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as far as like Mustard Plug goes, they came down and an extremely sociable bunch of guys. Who were basically just hanging out, in between, sets, waiting for their turn to play on stage. And I remember they had an extremely attractive girl with them who I discovered was basically their masseuse that they just hired to be on the road with them. And, and she was extremely friendly and stuff like that. So we basically just chilled and hung out and like, drank and, got amped up for the show and all that good stuff. And I know. At one point, I linked up with Mustard Plug for an interview, again with Adam,
Right.
years later, and I brought up the masseuse, and I was like, oh, what happened to the masseuse? It's such an ingenious idea, by the way, to get an attractive girl like on road with you just to party and hang out. And at the same time, if you need a back rub, like
Yeah, it's like, oh, the van life is just so tense.
So yeah, so like I mentioned it, I was like, oh, whatever happened to the masseuse? And one of the members was like, oh, that was my ex-girlfriend. She's like, yeah, we're not together anymore.
Like, yeah, now you gotta have one of the other members give you a massage.
But yeah, so that's my Mustard Plug story for that.
That's funny. I never heard of at least a ska band having a masseuse.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a smart idea.
And Moon paid for it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
I'm sure they
okay.
probably, if they did pay her anything, I'm sure it was just like, hey, let's get a masseuse. And
okay. Was she like / merch person, or she just was masseuse? That was it.
She was just like the way from what I recall, and this was like freaking 10, 20 years ago. She just like said, "Oh, I'm their masseuse." Like she wasn't even like, she wasn't even like, selling shit or anything like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah, so naturally her question back was like, oh, what band are you in? And I was like, oh, I work for the record label. So, yeah, fun stuff and fun times. So that was part of my what became of my responsibilities as like booking shows. And I also did writing for the label as well. I did press kits and stuff like that. And
so you did all the press releases that I posted on the site probably.
Yeah. And I was also the main mail guy. Because at one point I was really the only person working at Moon at one point. It was just me. Eventually it became just me and Buck's
who was the one
brother-in-law.
Was her name Beth? I'm trying to think of someone who used to do all the promos.
Oh, Patty.
Patty,
yes.
Because she used to send us stuff for when we used to do a radio show in Keystone College. She would send us all these promos like,
awesome.
Like, sweet, we can get free stuff. Which is one of the reasons why I still do the website to this day, is get free stuff.
Moonscar was really fun to work at.
Yeah.
The way I would describe my daily working experience at Moon would be comparing it to something like High Fidelity. You know that movie?
Yeah.
Where I mean, and when that movie came out, I remember thinking like, what John Cusack was going through, like that was basically my experience. Like, having regular people come in all the time and just talk about music, but not buy anything.
And you guys would be music snobs, but about ska, I guess.
Yeah, and I wouldn't describe myself as a music snob. But
you're a real big Fish fan? Oh.
But certainly Adam was, though. Adam was like,
yeah,
you don't want that fucking album.
Yeah, Adam has no filter, yes.
But, yeah, so, what was cool about Moonscar too was that people from all over the world would visit this record store just to buy as much music as they possibly can. Yeah. And there would always be these guys from Brazil, for instance. Like every year they would show up with like, several pieces of luggage and suitcases, empty suitcases.
Wow.
And they would come in and they would just be like 2 of everything or 3 of everything, or, they would literally like, just stay in the store until every single, suitcase was filled to the brim of ska music.
We'll just take this wall, please.
Yeah, so it was basically like, it was a real mecca of ska music. And I mean, sure, at the time, you could find record stores in the city that had their own ska section, but this was all ska and all reggae. There was a lot to be said about that, about being the only one that did this.
Yeah, because I used to go to Tower Records. I used to go to Generation Records, not Generation X.
Generation Records,
yeah,
which is still around.
Yeah, I'm surprised that's still around. But Tower Records, I think, is not around, but it's overseas. There's some type of life over there.
Yeah,
like Japan
or something like that. Yep.
Did you see the documentary that
I loved it.
That
yeah,
Colin Hanks did? Yeah.
Yeah, that documentary was awesome. especially for a music fan and a music aficionado, I highly recommend watching a documentary.
Usually
like
any
that.
music documentary is just good. The one about WLIR was good.
That was awesome too.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that as well.
I'm like, man, I gotta go listen to some 80s music now.
That's how I felt after watching that movie. I was very, amped to
Adam
pull
and
out.
I saw a screening once for seeing American Hardcore and at Sony's building.
Oh yeah. Right
so
on, I like that movie too.
That was a good one. I'm trying to think what other documentaries.
Yeah, that's funny.
there was.
That's funny you mentioned that. Actually, that was I got that for a girl that I was going out with at one point. She was a big hardcore fan, and that was like one of like her birthday gifts that I got her, and I was like, oh, you should watch this movie.
Yeah.
So.
And then they have the ska one that's coming out at some point. They did a Kickstarter.
I heard about that.
Raised over $100,000 for it, and it was like such a success.
A North American filmmaker is putting that together?
Yeah, it's Taylor out in California. He used to be in a ska band. I forget what the ska band was.
Is he just focusing? He's
it's just
on third wave
on the
or
90s,
California?
On the 90s. So he was doing interviews over here recently in the summertime with like Cooley and Bucket, and he was down in Supernova Skyfest doing a bunch of interviews down there. And then he might be using some of my photos for the ones that I've taken over the years, all of my film ones from like early days. But we'll see. Because I was like, I would gladly, provide my photos for the movie, because I've always wanted a great ska documentary that actually got,
that can
wide
utilize.
Yeah, wide release. Because there was the Brooklyn Rocksteady documentary that was pretty good, but it was
pretty good.
That was like,
I saw that too.
That was free online, so you can watch it on Vimeo or whatever. But
yeah, and one thing I remember about watching that particular film was thinking, well, man, the scene really did change, because it's really about the scene that was happening like only a few years back.
Yeah.
Which is completely different from how I remembered the scene when I was really involved in ska music, like around the late 90s and early 2000s and stuff like that.
But I'm trying to think of like what I did, because I remember going to shows, but I didn't at some point at some point the ska shows kind of were far in between, but it's just like around 2001, 2004, I didn't really seem to go to too many shows. Mm-hmm. And I'm like looking back at all my photos that I've taken, I'm like, I didn't take anything in 2003. There was one year where I took off.
That's funny you say that, because like I was more or less in that same niche at that time period where I just stopped going to shows for whatever reason. Maybe I got sick of like going to shows.
You do get very burnt out of going to so many shows.
Yeah, but I got back in a big way, and at that time too, I had a girlfriend who was really involved in and wanted to do things like that and go to shows and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, I would always like shoot that down and be like, maybe next time, like just too tired to like do that. I think it was just that moment in time where like I just needed a break from.
I usually get that around this time to like February, and then it's like, wow, I haven't been to a show since, and like this year it was like I didn't go to a show until like April or May. Like it's just like you just get kind of burnt out of going, and plus I'm like a father now, so it's kind of tough.
Yeah, that's understandable for sure.
Yeah, so it's like he was in a phase where he would just, every time he'd leave, he would just, even if I had to go take a piss, he'd be like, "Daddy!" and scream. It's like, I just need to take a pee. But even back before I didn't have a kid, I would still get burnt out, and especially my brother wanted to go to shows too, because he lived up north. So it's like,
and I recall though, like right before I started really getting back into the swing of going to shows, though, that we saw a couple of shows together, and we linked up and saw shows like Bad Manners and English Beat and stuff like that.
Plaza and Webster Hall. Which is not.
I think that was like right around the beginning of when I was really getting back.
Yeah,
into
like 2000. Even like I think when I started getting back into shows again, around like more frequently, was when the Pilfers reunited again, and it was at the old Knitting Factory on Leonard Street.
Oh yes, yeah.
And it was with Bigger Thomas and some other band, one of the drummers from.
That was like around 2007 or something like that.
2005, I think.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least the second time that they had a reunion was like.
Yeah, because I missed another reunion, but thankfully they're kind of on and off
They were
good.
having reunions. At that point, they were having reunions like every 2 years or
Yeah.
something like that.
It's like Cooley's like, all right, we gotta.
And eventually, they started to make new music, which was cool.
Yeah.
And the Pilfers were like, I remember being at a show with you and your brother, and this was probably the record release of their latest album, and it was a long time in between albums,
like 20 years or something like that.
And I remember like thinking, the music was pretty good, but I remember thinking that the audience there probably wanted to hear more of the older stuff.
Well, that's why Cooley, when they did that record release show, they did all the stuff that was going to be the old favorite stuff, and so they played 2 sets. But then he had so many freaking bands on it, which I keep busting his balls about, that they didn't go on until like 1:30. I'm like, I need to get home, dude. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, and I was like so tired, and like they're playing all their new stuff, which is nice. I especially with Pilfer's new album, I listened to it. I'm like, it's good, and then it just kind of stacked up, and I'm like, this is really good stuff.
Yes, yeah. You know what?
It's still missing, I think, Vinny's trombone, style.
Well,
but
Kevin
the
Kevin Batchelor subbed for that album.
Yeah, he did a great job though. Yeah, I liked
trombone and all that, and he was awesome.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen him have more of a contribution afterwards. I don't think
It was
I don't
just a
think
one-off
he
thing, I
yeah,
think.
I don't think he really stuck with the band after that, but the music is good, and for anyone who's a Pilfers fan, and if you have second guesses about revisiting them, I mean, that album is actually really good. I mean, I can't promise you it will replicate the love that you may have
the first two albums.
of the first two albums. But just understand though that
it's a new time.
it's definitely a new time. It was at least like 15 years in between albums, so you're gonna hear a different take on the Pilfers with this one. But the music itself is solid, and I'm going to appreciate that album a lot.
Yeah,
Since its release.
When we saw Cooley recently on the Rock Cruise boat thing, we were just talking to him afterwards, and we were just talking about, my brother and I were just talking about like the song Jack Ashes, it's like a tough one to listen to.
That's a good track.
Yeah, because it's like about death and stuff, and we're all in
Loss.
Cooley and us were dealing with loss of parents, so we've definitely grown closer over the years because of that, and it's so funny how for that Knitting Factory show, and like Cooley's like talking, and all of a sudden he's like, Brian Crump going out. So I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, he knows me. So it's like cool, like someone that I grew up listening to and becoming a friend of him, which I got to get him on the podcast.
And that's exactly how I felt, within the friendships that I formed through working at Moon, because like I said before, I was a fan first and foremost of Moon Sky. I loved Moon Records before I started working there. And when I started working there, I began to be very acquainted and strike up friendships with many of the artists and people who worked within Moon Sky Records. And a lot of them have become longtime friendships that today I'm thankful to say that I'm still in touch with. And these are people that I admired a lot, even when I was in my high school years. I admired these musicians and artists, and ultimately they became like very good friends of mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely.
So I could definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, the
between
same
you
thing.
and Cooley.
It's like so funny how I've just become friends with so many bands I've been listening to most of my whole life. I remember annoying the hell out of Bucket all the time at shows when I was just starting out, just always asking questions, and now we're Facebook friends, but things like that. But we're like, oh, do you remember us? He's like, yeah, you guys are the ones that always asking all the questions all the time because we're always bothering him when he's at the merch table. But yeah, let's switch gears now. You wanted to talk about the podcast format, right? Why I changed it?
Yes, So I mean, I'll leave it to you to put in that intro.
Well,
on that topic.
I like doing it because and plus I didn't think of it would be a problem because I thought, I did this for college radio that I used to play whatever I wanted, and then it was okay. But then I guess the podcast area is a little gray because you can there's some formats that like Mixcloud or something like that where you can do it streaming, but you can't download it. And it's kind of, and then it's also, you can play any song you want, but you can only do 2 or 3 times of one band. And it's like, I don't feel like I want to limit myself. I want to play whatever the fuck I want and do whatever I want, say whatever I want, and not have it where it's like there's only a certain genre I can play because they're okay with me playing that music. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna bail out now and plus I'm probably gonna remove some of the old episodes.
Oh man, don't do that.
I know. I'm like I might keep them up for a little while, but I'm afraid I'm gonna get like a cease and desist. Which, I mean, the worst case scenario is I'll just take that episode down.
But that's what it is, though. Is just they're just telling you to stop doing what you're doing, and then you just have to. I mean, I
should have done more research about it before I started, because it's like if you use like 2 seconds of a song, you can be getting sued or cease and desist because that's someone's music that you didn't ask permission. Which my new theme song is from Rude Boy George, so I asked permission to use that, so at least I can use their music. But I'm sure like 50% of the bands are fine with it, and I think the person that didn't want me to play their music, that person was like, well, you just gave my song away for free. I'm like, I didn't want to get in a debate about it with her, but the person, him or her. But I was like, okay, is someone really gonna go cut up, a 3-minute song out of like a 2-hour podcast? Like it's like I don't get the whole logic of that. And it's like, is my one. I'm promoting good music. I'm promoting your band, and then you're giving me shit because I was telling people about it because you want to make a few pennies on royalties. I know it's stupid, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, but that's where lies my whole gripe with that whole thing, though, is because you are really doing somebody a service for that. You're allowing music of an artist or a band that wouldn't otherwise be heard. And, a lot of these bands, though, let's be honest, a lot of these bands are, like, hardly known,
Most of the bands. I mean, I do play, especially the 80s episode, and I do play a lot of mainstream stuff. I actually thought I was going to get in trouble by Jeff Goldblum, but I'm like, but not by him. I'm like, that'd be great if he actually wrote me. But
like his management team.
Yeah, like Capitol Records or whatever, whatever label is his, like one of the mainstream labels were going to, tell me to take the episode down. But I don't know. It is what it is, and I didn't feel like my initial thing for the podcast. I wanted to have it be where I was interviewing people or just doing what we're doing right now and just shooting the shit. And but then I'm like, oh, I'll play music in between. But then I realized, I'm like, well,
I was thinking about that.
I'm like, I can't really get to shows too often. I'm like, well, maybe I'll start doing interviews over the phone or Skype, like other podcasts do, where I can do more frequently than like once a month.
I kind of like this format of just being on location and shooting the shit and just.
Yeah, I just need to get off my ass to do it.
As we speak right now, we're right on the Bowery, Lower East Side, right before.
You're trying to find a parking spot for a good half hour. No, maybe it was like 20 minutes.
No, yeah. No, the funny thing is, though, is that we found parking right away, though, but we were contemplating better spots. Because all these signs are like.
Well, it says 7 p.m., 6 p.m. You can't. It's good after that, but it was 5 o'clock and it's too early. But hey, we found one right in front of the club, so can't beat that.
Yeah.
And I'll be taking the.
It's gonna be a fun show, I'm sure. I'm definitely excited to see Mustard Plug.
It's such a small club, though. It's like I don't know why they picked this club. I mean, I've seen 2 or 3 shows here, and it's like. Not a ska show, but it's been just like singer-songwriter stuff, and I'm like, even that, like we're right up. I'm afraid I'm gonna get hit with Vinny's trombone tonight because that definitely has happened before when there was actual a stage, and I actually still have a ding on my one of my lenses from Slow Gherkin from when it came back here last time for the Apple Stomp 2.0, and I was in the crowd and I was so close, and all of a sudden the trombone he lowered his trombone and
I vaguely remember this story.
Yeah, so I still have like a ding in in the rubber part that just won't go away.
Sounds like you're still upset over it.
I mean, I'm glad he said it's like, oh, I'm sorry, like immediately afterwards, but thankfully it didn't get ruined or anything. Yes. It didn't hit the glass, hit the rubber part, but yeah, so I have to be very
minded
tonight, of where I stand, which might have to be on the edge. But Vinny does like to get close to my camera and stuff from time to time. That's the rock show.
I'll tell you, man, like, and we've been friends for a long time though, and I've always appreciated your work as far as like photography goes, man.
Thanks.
Like, I mean, you really do capture the show, through your pictures and stuff like that though, and I mean, anyone can take a camera and just go into a show and take pictures and stuff like that though, but check out this guy's work.
SkaPunkPhotos.com.
Ska Punk Photos. See, I see how such a good friend I am. I'm allowing you to have that plug.
You're plugging my own stuff on my own podcast.
Yo, that's what friends do, man.
Yeah, I actually got an email around Instagram. Someone that's coming with starting to Scagnetti. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be at the show tonight." But I got into concert photography because of you. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. It's like I don't hear that too often. That I'm like, oh, Brian Kremko, the influential person. But I'm like, I just try to document all the shows that I see, and the main reason why I started it was to get into shows for free, and then and actually like, oh, I like doing photography. So that's why I kind of started. It's the same thing as running the website. It's like I want to promote bands, but at the same time I want to get into free. I don't want to pay for.
Whatever happened to before the concert?
Well, before the concert. Well, I had a kid, so it's usually when bands want to record is like 3:00 in the afternoon after sound check, and I just can't get down to do it. And it's also difficult finding a spot to do it because I don't want to do it in some stale studio that other people do it now. And also there's just so many different sites that do it. Like when he's got what's it, Steve Madden or whatever, the shoe company.
Yes,
they have fucking sessions, and it's like when they have that, like this people like, oh, this band's playing at this shoe store. It's like, okay, it's too much. But it was difficult trying to find spots, and one club that I will not name I haven't gone back since I got kicked out of their thing because I was in the middle of recording Emerson Hart from Tonic, and the owner of the company came in.
Oh, I vaguely remember this story.
And he waved the paper.
I can't recall what club it is though.
I'm not going to tell you. It's one that it's like singer-songwriters always go to. But I hope it closes down.
So it's still around.
Fuck that club, yes. But he put a piece of paper, and he's like, "You didn't ask permission to do this," and I'm like, okay. I'm like, I've been shooting stuff here for a while now. I'm like, is this in a dressing room? And he's like, and I'm like, and he's like, and then the next day, I'm like, I check my phone and I get a cease and desist letter from their lawyer. I'm like, fuck these guys. So I had to take down all the videos that were inside that club.
Now that was the club though. That wasn't the band.
That was the club. Yeah. The band, like Chris Trapper of the Push Stars, that was one of the videos, and I told him, and he's like, that sucks. I'm like, yeah, can you please not go to this club anymore because I'd like to see you. So now it's like I have like a personal band that I won't go to see. Thankfully, not too many bands that I've liked have gone there because maybe because I just keep spreading bad venom towards their way.
It kind of comes along with the territory. Not everyone's going to share your same, views on such things, and there are going to be a-holes out there.
But what pisses me off is I'm okay to shoot in a Live Nation venue, but I can't. So it's not a Live Nation video, so you got to make up your mind of what venue it is. But I was able to shoot in a Live Nation, in like an Irving Plaza. The only time at Irving Plaza when I was shooting with Jason from Authority Zero and the one bouncer that's been there for like since I've been going to shows. I forget his name, but we always talk New York Rangers. But he's like, oh, don't shoot towards the door because like, we can get in trouble or something like that. So I'm like, okay, we'll just rotate. And he's like, yeah, just rotate. So that was the only time I got grief from Irving Plaza. Other than that, it was fine shooting all over the place. I would shoot in Central Park. Oh, did I shoot? No, Washington Square Park, and a few other places around on the streets.
Sure, yeah,
in the squares.
I think I remember like helping you as well with
Larry and his Flask.
Yes.
That was only the second one, and that was around here. I was at Astor Place. and they were all busking.
That was a cool show.
Yeah.
That was definitely one of the bands that you introduced me to that I enjoyed.
They just came here a couple of weeks ago and played in Brooklyn, but I didn't get to go see them. They just had a new album come out called The Remedy, I think. But that was they were definitely one of my favorite live bands. And those guys, and then when they came back a couple of weeks ago, they were just busking, doing a whole live set and on Facebook.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We followed them and we recorded their busking set in front of Astor Place.
Yeah, the little
cube
thing. Yeah,
and random people were coming up and like getting into the shot and spinning the cube thing while they were playing.
Yeah, I wish I mic'd it a little bit better, but I was still starting out with trying to figure out things. I don't think I had as much recorders as possible, but from the ashes of that has come the podcast, which is a little more easier. Like right now we're recording in a car, and so it's a little bit better of trying to find locations to do. And plus it's easier for me to just talk with somebody instead of trying to film something and make and then I was getting worried about cops stopping me for like permits and all this stuff, because it's like you got to wipe.
Come on, this is New York.
It's New York. You need a permit to wipe your ass. It's like there's so much restrictions now.
Now, yes, and
and you watch something like The Deuce on HBO, and then it's like, they can get a lot away with a lot of shit back then. Back in the 70s. Have you watched that show, by the way?
I started watching it. I didn't follow through completely with the first season.
Second season was pretty good too.
But,
that just ended.
But what I saw, I liked. You know, it's a solid series.
We should talk TV stuff before.
Sure.
Have you seen all the news about Star Wars? All the Star Wars shows that are like the streaming stuff.
I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't watch a lot of that stuff. I'm more of a fan of the film.
Well, this is all this is going to be the stuff that's next year on Disney. I think it's called Disney Plus, the streaming service. So it's got Pedro Pascal from Game of Thrones. He's going to be in The Mandalorian. He's going to be the lead character, yeah. And Jon Favreau's been directing that, and I think
Pedro Pascal, he's
and Narcos, yeah.
Yes, that guy. Yes, yeah. He's awesome. And Narcos is I'm watching that right now. Narcos Mexico, which is awesome.
Do you need to watch the other seasons to watch this one?
I would.
Okay.
I mean,
because it's about Pablo Escobar, right?
Well, no, this season's more about the cartels in Mexico.
Okay.
And Narcos is kind of like a mix of drama as well as it's kind of like a drama / documentary format, but it's more drama and acting than the documentary aspect of it. But there is they definitely do use real footage with certain scenes, and they integrate it into the storyline, which is dramatized. But it's really fascinating. The first 2 seasons do center on the cartels in Colombia with Escobar, and then it moves on to the Cali cartels, of Colombia, for the 3rd season, and now it's the Mexican cartels, which they're covering, and
Diego Luna, what's his name? Diego Luna
something or other,
But he's gonna be having his own show. From his Rogue One character is gonna have his own show.
Yes, I heard
Disney,
that.
on the Disney streaming. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be good.
Oh, cool. Did you like Solo, A Star Wars Story?
I did. I didn't like it as
much as you wanted to.
As much as the other ones, it was.
That seems to be the consensus.
It was dark. It was hard to see in the beginning. It was just like very muddy, but I didn't like him as Solo in the beginning, but he kind of won me over at the end.
Yeah, I would have much rather preferred actually a name that was being thrown around, and honestly, I don't even remember
the guy
his
from
name,
Baby Driver. I thought would have been a good choice.
Well, there was an actor who he's like a dead ringer for George Harrison Ford.
George Harrison.
For Harrison Ford. And
he's fast enough for you, old man.
He actually played a young Harrison Ford in a movie called
I think
Adelaide or something or other, and he, if you watch this movie and you see the scenes of this actor, he might as well be like, Harrison Ford's, forgotten child, love child with Carrie Fisher or something.
Hey, maybe.
But,
God, I read that book. That was kind of awkward to read.
The story is though that he did audition for that role, but he didn't get the role, and he's actually been auditioning to be a young Indiana Jones or a young Han Solo for years. So his YouTube videos of these audition videos have been around for quite some time. So you can still pull him up on YouTube or whatever. But he would have been great, man. And when I found out that this guy that they got for Solo in the movie, when I found out that he was picked,
I was like, okay.
Yeah,
but he did all right.
Seem like he didn't seem like the right fit to me.
Donald Glover as Lando was excellent, though, I thought.
Yes, I agree. And he was awesome. Childish Gambino.
And or that name, or his real name. As a Star Wars fan, though, I appreciated it. I liked it well enough, but I probably would have written it differently. Yeah, well, with all the problems that have been going on with them just firing people, and I think Ron Howard kind of saved it. I think, but it's
saved it, but yet
it could have been so much more.
The movie was considered a bomb.
Yeah,
unfortunately, but I believe the final product, though, most likely is much more of a success than the original product would have been.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy that they kind of after that they kind of like, all right, we're not gonna do too many more spin-off movies for right now. We got to rethink it, because that's what a lot of people were worried about, is there's gonna be so much Star Wars shit like every year. It's like, no, it's like you got to build it up of the anticipation of it. And
yes, you do.
And hopefully with the Star Wars shows that they have on the Disney streaming thing next year, I hope it's like spaced out.
Hopefully it won't be overkill, because it could just as easily go that way, where people would just become so sick of Star Wars.
Like Lobot, the series, it's
and people were kind of sick of Star Wars after a while, during the late 80s.
Well, and the prequel too, the prequel era. Like, oh, come on, we're gonna do Force Awakens. And people were pissed off at the latest one too, which I didn't. I would have done things differently, but I still liked it.
Oh yeah, I still enjoyed it, but is it how I envisioned Star Wars to be? Like,
and what happened with Luke? Yeah, it's like, I would have done something differently with Luke. With Carrie Fisher, I don't know what the hell they're going to do for the next one, though.
Yeah, and supposedly, though,
they're not going to kill her off.
Supposedly, they're just going to be reusing footage that they filmed, like,
and then kill her in a spaceship
or anything.
I think what they should have done is they should have just, when she got sucked out of that spaceship, instead of doing the Mary Poppins thing in space, they should have just killed her then. But and then I don't know, but. I don't know.
And I would have preferred Luke to have still survived. I would have preferred that.
But I guess he'll be a ghost.
More Luke is good.
He'll be a ghost in the next one.
You know what we have, though, for the next one? We have...
Daisy Ridley?
What's his name?
Adam Driver?
Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams, though, is going to be...
Yeah, so you bring him back to kill him off. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what they say.
And he could be drinking like a Colt 45 and Do you not remember those?
Of course I do.
Okay. I don't know. I thought it should have got a bigger laugh than a courtesy laugh. I'm trying to think of what other things we can talk about before we got to go. We got maybe for like 5 more minutes. Well, Stan Lee just passed away. So, that's... And I just see like Bill Maher making an asshole comment today about making fun of like...
I didn't hear that.
All I guess he was making fun of comic book fans and saying like, oh, that it's not sophisticated literature and everyone's mourning Stan Lee and big fucking deal kind of thing. And it's like, I like Bill Maher a lot of times, but sometimes he needs to shut the fuck up.
Well, he just speaks what's on his mind. And, sometimes it could be refreshing, and other times it's not at the right moment.
And it's like, it's the same thing. Like Armie Hammer was making fun of everyone like posting selfies with Stan Lee, and it's like that's how people are mourning of celebrating this guy's life because he touched so many people with his movies, like that.
I guarantee you, this is not going to be the last we are going to see of Stan Lee. He still has probably quite a few more cameos.
He has a cameo
already
in
filmed.
the latest Avengers, and that was the last one, I think, because they kind of grouped it together.
Well, how about Captain Marvel though?
I don't know about Captain Marvel, but I know for X-Men Dark Phoenix he didn't do it, which I didn't even see the Apocalypse, so I don't even know if he was in that one either.
Yeah, well, yeah, Stan Lee, obviously legend. Responsible for countless of Marvel characters.
Yeah.
For Marvel Comics.
But he's
being what it
co-creator
is.
though, so I mean he did what with Jack Kirby?
Well, for Spider-Man, he was co-creator with Steve Ditko, which for a long time, Stan Lee didn't really want to share that credit, and eventually he did. And so there's like this really sordid, past rocky past and relationship that he has with Steve Ditko, who ultimately became a recluse and didn't want to be paid he just wanted credit to be known as the guy who co-created Spider-Man, but Stan Lee always refused to give him due credit, not until like recently, or until the last 10 years or so.
What do you think his best cameo was for all the movies that it was in?
Wow, there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, but I think the funniest one was the Deadpool when he was the stripper DJ. Oh my god, that one had me laughing the most, I think.
Sure.
And then the one recently was funny too. I forgot what.
I mean, a lot of them
Adventures,
are like, honestly, a lot of them are really not that memorable, but it's just customary to have Stan Lee appear in a movie.
Yeah, it's gonna feel different.
Oh
that
yes,
he's
in it. Yeah, it will just feel weird if he wasn't in it. But the cameos themselves, though, a lot of times it's just like him on the street.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I was like, I think the stripper one was the funniest one because it's just all of a sudden
I like the one he did do a cameo in Captain America that I like, where he made a funny wisecrack, where Captain America or Steve Rogers rather is being awarded, and he says something like, "I thought he was taller" or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Well, how about this? So how about I know you're a big fan of Walking Dead. And so, how do you like the?
I was, yeah. I mean, I've kind of since Negan has showed up, I've been kind of like, yeah. It's like I like Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I like what he does, but I feel like the last 2 seasons were so overkill of him and what he did with like the whole scene with the baseball bat scene, and it's just like it kind of like, and then it was just like annoying that whole season where they would show up and it's like all these fucking guys again, and then like just causing disruption, and I kind of like this new season, but I'm just kind of watching to watch it now, and it's like.
So you didn't see?
No, I know. Yeah, I've been watching it, so I know Rick's gone, and so I know that it picks up.
I think this season is great. I think this season is refreshing because now they have a new showrunner.
Yeah.
And so.
But the other
it's a
guy
lot more
was
fast paced, and it's not as dragged out as previous seasons have been.
Yeah, and they can give more spotlight to Daryl and Carol and other characters because it's like, and I'm kind of happy with what they did with Rick, because it's like I like Andrew Lincoln and I like his character, so at least
you're aware though that he's going to be back.
Yeah, so that's why I'm happy with what they did with that, because I'll take movies over being killed, which I thought he was going to do, so it felt like kind of a chip.
Sure. I'm especially excited because basically with the Walking Dead series as it is now, they made major changes that don't line up with what's been happening in the comic books, which I do follow as well, and most notably obviously is the fact that they killed off Carl, who's still a major part of what's happening in the comics now, as well as Rick. Of course, he's killed off now.
What's that, like Amy or whatever her name is? The blonde hair chick. What the hell's her name? That was killed off with the governor in that TV show.
Andrea.
Andrea, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, because she's alive in the comic books.
Yeah, she is.
And she was the love interest instead of Michonne.
Right.
From the TV show.
Yeah. Now what they're doing though is that. So they had this new time jump now.
Yeah, the time jump with Judith,
which doesn't happen in the comics. They have a 2-year time jump, but now they have a 6-year time jump, which doesn't happen in the comics.
It's like, what happened in that 6 years?
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out in the movies.
Yeah, maybe that's what will be in the movies.
But yeah, like so it's obvious now though that to fill in those gaps of what would have happened with the characters of Carl and Rick. I mean, especially in the case of Carl, they're using the character of Henry, who's one of the children that lives in the kingdom.
Yes.
And he's gonna stand in for a lot of the stuff that Carl would go through in this storyline.
Carl.
And then you have Judith, of course, which is now grown up and she's like 6 years old or whatever. And in the comics, like Carl forms like an unlikely relationship with Negan and starts visiting him and talking to him.
So I guess Judith's gonna be doing that stuff now. Yeah. Based on that one last episode.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I also like the approach of what they did with Fear of the Walking Dead this year, because I liked last season with the Native Americans and stuff. I'm like, I actually would have a show just of those guys, because it's great to finally have some Native Americans being like lead characters on a show. Which that one of the guys ended up being Sitting Bull in one of the movies.
I kind of like what they're doing with Fear of the Walking Dead too, although they got rid of the best character in my opinion, which was
Kim,
the drug addict.
Right. He didn't want to be on the show anymore, so it's
he's the son of
what's his face, Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah. So whatchamacallit? I kind of like that it's now somewhat of a Western. Like a post-apocalyptic Western.
And I like Morgan, and it's like they killed off Morgan years ago in a comic book, but I've liked, because what's-his-face is so good that it's like, yeah, I could see have him lead the show.
But it's kind of strange, though, because like Morgan is like, he flip-flops a lot. Like he'll go crazy, and then he'll be a pacifist. And then he'll go crazy again and kill a bunch of people, and then he'll be a pacifist again.
Yeah, it's make up your mind.
They built up this whole thing where like he ended up leaving Alexandria and walking towards Texas, and then by the mid-season he wanted to go back to Alexandria and walk back.
He came all this way. I'm like, all right, I'm done. It's like almost like Forrest Gump when he runs and he's like, okay, I'm done now. So I've been liking what Fear the Walking Dead has been doing. I thought it was like definitely a refreshing take on it. Some people hate it, but I don't know, I like it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with the Walking Dead. I guess we got 2 more episodes until the break.
Well, they're definitely building up to something major.
The Whisperers, right?
The Whisperers, which is if you're a horror fan, you would probably appreciate the storyline that's coming up, which is a very wicked and awesome storyline, and Negan has a huge part in it in the comic books, and I really hope that the series follows through very well.
Is Negan good now? Is that what it is?
Kind of. Negan's a very interesting character in the comics in that, obviously he gets incarcerated by Rick, but he ends up becoming, kind of like a
leader?
Kind of like a person who now understands and accepts where Rick is coming from, and he understands like Rick's ideals.
Okay.
So in the comic book, like he's trying to appease Rick and trying to actually be his friend and try to prove to him that he's on his side and he can be a helpful member of the community.
Okay.
But of course, Rick and everybody else doesn't. They don't trust him at all. And so like Negan goes rogue and he's still arrogant and he's still obnoxious and he's still a killer. He kind of does like redeem himself in a way, So I do want to see that.
Hopefully that happens. Yeah, because I like Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
He's a great actor, and I think he can pull it off. And if you're tired of old Negan, if he pulls this off and follows the way the character development of Negan is in the comics, it's going to be good writing.
All right.
So hopefully we have that to look forward to.
All right, I think we should go get some pizza, and then we're going to go.
Sounds good. Let's go see a ska show.
All right. So we're going to go have a ska show, and then maybe next week I'm scheduled to talk with Aaron from Real Big Fish, which should be pretty cool. We'll see if that happens or not, but so far it's scheduled. You never know with these things. That's what's like before the concert stuff. It's like you never know. It's like you schedule it and then it's like, all right, I'm going to do it. And then you get there and like, no, I haven't eaten food yet. I'm not doing anything, which has happened to me before, but I will not name that band. Maybe for another podcast. But yeah, so it's been fun talking with you. And
always a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
I mean, I'm sure we can.
This could have gone for like another hour.
I know I had so many other things to talk about, like geeky movie related stuff, but yeah, it's another podcast, I guess. All right, signing off.
Pretty well.
Yeah, it went well. All right, signing off. Later.